Hello, Waswere here, back with another video, and today we're showcasing a 2000+% trio Enrage Zamorak guide. Zamorak group Enrage is interesting in the fact that you need only one kill to get the title, instead of pushing your Enrage all the way up there. This has opened up the titles for people like me that might not have been consistent enough to push up to 2k or 4k, but good enough to grind out a kill or two. This video is going to be directed at those people, but if you aren't one of those people, stick around, you might just learn a thing or two about the boss. The first thing we're going to go over is the preset. It's a pretty standard mage preset, but I'll note the following. Full Crit Bloom is nearly a requirement. If you're an Iron, you can get away with 4 out of 5 and filling the empty slot with Acto, but the Fungal Shield is just too good to ignore for a main account. Staff of Armadyl alongside Erethdor's Grimoire is 100% a requirement. You just need to do a lot of DPS in very short bursts, and with magic, it's the only way to do it. Your dual wield magic tier isn't that important, but I'd say it should be at least T90 before attempting this, as later in the fight you do a lot of dual wield magic Sunshine, as your cooldown of Sunshine goes down with pad order, but your cooldown of staff spec doesn't. Reaver's Ring is the best in slot ring because you don't splash as long as you are overloaded and have a DPS prayer on. The two essences of finality I bring are Armadyl Battle Staff and Zamorak Staff. The Zamorak Staff is basically a Gothic Staff, but instead of lowering defense, it lowers Mage instead. So you lower Zamorak's Mage level, and then the Mage autos hit less often and hit for less damage. Shield-wise, I'm using an Arcane to help block damage whenever I shield camp. In the event that you are basing an Immortality intercepting the team a lot throughout the fight, you can bring a non-arcane shield such as a defender to help you not get smited in that instance. For the inventory, bring the standard stuff you'd bring in every preset, an overload, the extra rune pouches, vuln bombs, blade to dive, and a vitality pot. For prayer, blessed flask and penance powder is used. Make sure you have a 6-dose adrenaline renewal as you will need them all. And for the rest of your spaces, fill it in with food. I bring 6 super brews, 5 sailfish soups, and 2 primal feasts. Primal feasts are special in the fact that you can unpack them for 4 pieces of hard food, each healing 2,500 each. So each primal feast is 10,000 worth of healing. And last but not least, bring an extra Hellhound pouch. If it dies and you don't have an extra pouch, the kill is basically dead as you really need it to survive P7. With everyone having an extra pouch, you can trade it around if someone goes through 2 by accident. Well, now that the gear section is done, let's go through some Zammy-specific mechanics. And no, not his boss mechanics, but his HP mechanics. Zamorak has 3 different colors to his HP bar, and it determines what he can and can't do. The first is Gray HP bar. This happens at the start of each phase. While he is on Gray HP, every tick that Zammy doesn't take damage, it will heal up to 15k. Well, that is a downside. The major benefit is that Zammy is unable to do special attacks during Gray HP, but it's nearly impossible to DPS down the Gray HP bar, so it's advised to just charge the pad immediately. It also attacks at an increased speed on Gray HP. Both Gray HP and Red HP have a hit cap of 32.5k on every hit. This really doesn't come into play too much for magic because most of your hits are going to hit in that 12 to 13k range at a max. Red HP bar happens once a pad is charged. All the remaining Gray HP is converted into Red HP. Zammy will no longer heal, but will keep up the increased attack speed. The first special attack on this phase will happen after 1 to 5 autos. This amount is dependent on how close you were to a special attack on the end of the previous phase. The second special attack comes after approximately 15 autos. It's pretty long. Unless you get a really bad Red HP bar where it's like 700k, you're unlikely to get a second special attack, and your goal should be to always only get 1 red special per phase. This is a pretty confusing point, but it will continue on the old phase special attack rotation until green HP is met. So if you have charged 3 edicts, but the HP is still on red, the attack rotation will still be on phase 2, and then once you reach green HP, the rotation will go into the phase 3 attack rotation. Green HP bar is pretty standard. He takes damage, attacks at a slower rate than the other HP bars, and does special attacks every 5 auto attacks. One thing to note about this is that the first special of green HP bar will be 1 auto after green HP is met. So sometimes you can get back-to-back special attacks that you aren't ready for if you reach green HP at an inopportune time. The next section is the debuff section. There are 4 main debuffs that you want to apply to Zamorak. Smoke Cloud and Vulnerability are pretty normal, and you probably already apply them to all the bosses you do, but the other 2 are Enfeeble and Stagger. Enfeeble reduces the damage dealt by the target by 10% for 1 minute. It's almost like the defensive version of Vuln. Stagger reduces the target's chance to hit by 10% for 1 minute. This means that the range auto can actually splash on you with Crypt Bloom on. The damage reduction is huge. With how Animate Dead works together with damage debuffs, it ends up being about a 25% decrease. As I noticed on the Rune of Destruction, the Black Smoke went from about 2,000 per hit to 1,500 per hit with the Enfeeble debuff on. To apply this, you need to do it the same way as Smoke Cloud, except for you swap to the normal spellbook. I found the best practice is to assign each debuff to one person Smoke Clouding, 1 person Staggering, and 1 person Enfeebling, while the whole team focuses on vulning the boss with Vuln Bombs. Okay, one last thing before we get into the fight, the pad order. It's 2, 4, 3, 5, 6, 1. There are a multitude of reasons for this, but the goal of this is to make P5 and P6 pretty difficult so that P7 is way more manageable. You get pad 6 later in the rotation, so you can juice more damage with the buff on the second cycle of phase 7. Because for every stack of pad 6, you get 6% extra damage while below 60% HP. So, because we'll have 5 stacks on P7, that means a 30% damage buff, which will be really helpful for the second cycle. Before going on a walkthrough of the fight, I'd like to talk about how we deal with Zammy's mechanics. There are a total of 5 that he uses in various phases, using 3 of them per phase, in a rotational order. The first mechanic is Flames of Zamorak. It's commonly referred to as melee. Zammy will hit you with 2 strong melee hits, and then send a line of black smoke to the person who is the farthest east. So depending on positioning, sometimes it will go to the base, and sometimes it will go to the DPSers. Each stack of black smoke on the ground reduces Zammy's damage taken by 1%, so it's imperative to pick it up. When you pick it up, you get a debuff on your bar showing how many stacks you have, so you can roughly estimate what you'll be hit. He uses this mechanic on every phase but phase 4, and in terms of mitigating it, if you are high HP and it's phase 1 to 3, you can just Disruption Shield the first melee hit and tank the second one. You'll take about 3 to 4k damage combined. Then, if you are the furthest east, run in to start picking up the smoke, and on-tick your resonance when the bar empties to get a full heal. As the stacks of pad 4 grow, damage will seep through your resonance, so on phase 3 I suggest adding a second defensive like Reflect, and then on phase 5 and 6 you need to use 3 or 4 defensives or Immortality to not die to the smoke. I put a table on how it generally works out and what we generally do to protect against this damage. Infernal Tomb is the next mechanic. This is commonly referred to as getting sent inside. Zammy will place a rune above your head and send you into Infernus. At the same time, demons will spawn inside Infernus, and above 750% Enrage, they run extremely quickly. While you're inside, Zammy will charge up a big hit that can only be mitigated by stuns. The best way to deal with this mechanic doesn't change throughout the fight, which is a nice breath of fresh air after Flames of Zamorak, which changes every phase. There are a couple of things that need to be done to make sure that things go smoothly. First off is pre-stunning. There is a 2-tick overlap between when Zammy is stunnable to interrupt his attack and when you get dragged in. This gives you ample opportunity to get a stun off, making the hit very little, usually right around whatever your Enrage is. The amount of stuns you need is equal to the number of people on the team, so if one of you misses the stun, the hit will be super high, it will not be interrupted, and instead charge up for 20 seconds. This releases a blast that is impossible to mitigate without Immortality. Generally, the person without the stun will be the person who Immortalities intercepts the whole team, unless there is some sort of reason like they'll need Immortality for another mechanic later on. The other thing that you need to do is stun the crap out of these demons with Ice Barrage. If they spawn in the overworld they hurt, they get 2 times HP, and the damage they deal is approximately 5k melee hits rapidly. And you can't really prey-flick both the melee hits and the boss hits at the same time, so you just get GG'd with a high HP demon. Stun the demons, then G-Chain and use your Sigil, and boom, they are dead. Place down a Prism of Salvation while you're in here, found that assigning demons to barrage help. One person takes the left, one person takes the middle, and the other person takes the right. To get out of Infernus, you need to go to the rune that corresponds to the one above your head, Surge Blade to dive over to it, and get ready for another Sunshine. This mechanic happens on phase 1, 2, 3, and 6. For Rune of Destruction, Zamorak will cover the entire arena with red, and only a small band around max range will be safe. In that area, a black sludge will move across, dealing 2,000 damage and stunning people. This isn't too bad on its own, but it can be comboed with another mechanic such as Flames of Zamorak to combo you out. Debilitate or Reflect if needed. This mechanic also doesn't change much over the course of the fight, but the edicts make it harder to survive as you're getting less healing from fooding, you're taking more from the autos, but the rune itself doesn't change. Rune of Destruction also blocks the ability to go inside and kill the witch, so getting this to end the phase is really bad as you're just sitting there and wasting time. Ideally, you want it to start most phases, as when it does Rune of Destruction on red HP bar, it does not do another special attack until green HP is met or Rune of Destruction is over, so it gives you a good time to time exactly when the next mechanic's going to come. Be wary of Flames of Zamorak timing with the special, because as soon as it turns green HP, the two mechanics will be stacked on top of each other. The stacking happens on phase 2, 4, 5, and 6, and can be super deadly. Adrenaline Cage. This may be the easiest mechanic to deal with Zami. All he does is he drops everyone's prayer and fires a barrage of mage autos at the base. As long as the base stays within the attack, the rest of the team takes no damage. However, above 1500% Enrage, Zami will clear the target's devotion, meaning that it needs to be intercepted to survive. One DPSer will intercept the base, assign this before the kill starts, and they will devotion them. Make sure to stun relatively close together so that they are able to both be in their sunshine while intercepting. Though you don't want to be on top of each other. So that the person who's intercepting also gets their devotion clear. There are two extra scenarios to know about with Cage. If the Adrenaline Cage happens on red HP, then because of the fast auto attack speed, you will take an auto without prayer on. Unmitigated, this can do up to 7 to 8k damage, so it's best to have a defensive up when the cage will happen, or just time the specials in a way that you never get Adrenaline Cage on red HP. On phase 4, Adrenaline Cage happens after Rune of Destruction, meaning that can be stacked at the same time. The person intercepting will be taking the black sludge damage from both people, so Reflect or Debilitate can help there to help survive on top of Devotion. And last but not least is the Chaos Blast mechanic. Zamorak curls up into a ball and will charge up an attack. You can break this by stunning him with 1 stun per person. So in total 3 stuns in a trio. Generally we are opting not to break this mechanic, but instead do big damage and have the base intercept the team. In the event that the base doesn't have devotion up, you need to quote-unquote break the intercept. This is done by surging far away so that you start taking your own damage again. Ask the base when they are immorted if you need them to break it. Generally, they don't need it, but who knows, sometimes they do. In the event that the base is on cooldown due to getting a second Chaos Blast on the same phase, one of the DPSers will need to do the Immortality Intercept combo. Place down a Prism to heal your Hellhound, as well as it will take 12 to 15k damage from the blast. This attack is done on phase 3, 4, and 5. Okay, with the mechanics out of the way, let's do a walkover of my 4K kill. This is going to be live commentary, so it might be a little rambly, but I hope you enjoy. This is actually my second 4K kill. I wanted to do the second one just because it was less carried and more a team effort. So let's get into it. There are a couple things that I missed but wanted to talk about. First is the Zami attack order. It works off the previous phase while it's still in red HP and only moves over to the next phase once it goes to green HP. You won't skip any mechanics, so you can ignore the color coding of the rotation here, but once the phase transitions by going to green HP, you want to move across the row. So if your last mechanic on phase 1 is Rune of Destruction, your first mechanic on phase 2 will be Flames of Zamorak. Again, this is kind of confusing with the back and forth, but once you do enough 2k attempts, you'll get used to every special attack, what's coming, without even having to reference the Alt-1 plugin or the attack rotation. I'm going to leave a link to the Alt-1 plugin in the description. All you need to do is put that into the browser portion of Alt-1, and then you will be able to get the plugin and it'll show you what special attack is coming next. And then to heal a Hellhound, you have two main options. First is to use a Prism of Restoration. This is a Saren spell on the Ancient Spellbook. Pretty easy to put down. You just click the spell when you're off global cooldown, and it heals your familiar very quickly. On the other hand, you can also use Hellhound Scrolls, as each one heals 2k each. Generally, you want to use the Prism of Restoration for the majority of healing, as it's better bulk healing, and if you rely solely on scrolls, your Hellhound's going to continuously die. And then you save those scrolls for an emergency situation where you notice last second your Hellhound has 2k HP and you're about to take a big hit that's going to kill your Hellhound. I used a total of about 50 scrolls in all my 2k and 4k attempts so far. So, live commentary, Waswere here. Let's see how this goes. Before the kill starts, generally you want to check that you have 5 different buffs going. You have your Animate Dead, you have your Insight Fears, your Autocast, you have your Penance Powder, you're Overloaded, and you have Affliction on. If you have all 5 of those things going, you're ready to fight. So for killing the witches, we kill the second witch last, just because we're starting at that point. It's just easier for everyone to get into position. And it's nice because if you max range yourself to this Chaos Witch Channeler, you're pretty much in the perfect square to start at. We like to start right around this knob so that we guarantee that the smoke goes to the base on the first melee mechanic. So I start off the fight with an Enfeeble, as that's my debuff to go, and we get everything going like Vuln, Stagger, Smoke Cloud, and the boss is good to get hit. He's going to charge the pad pretty much instantly. You want to instant charge pads in 4K just because of how quickly it heals. But just doing my DPS rotation here, hoping for some crits and seeing what damage we can do. Once it goes into green HP, it's going to do 1 auto and then melee as the special attack. So because I'm high HP, I disrupt the first hit and take like a 2.8k from the second hit. And then we're just DPSing. At this point, your staff spec's going to be gone. So get thresholds, get a second Omni off, put on the dual wield to be able to G-Conk your way through it as well. And generally you want to get to like 4.25 would be ideal. Anything above that, you run the risk into getting room. So we actually missed the stun here. Someone was trying to just do a little bit too much DPS. So instead of taking that like 2k hit as we entered, instead we're going to take like a 20 to 30k hit. And the best way to mitigate this is to have someone Immortality. So Chef over here, Immortality, and he intercepted both of us so that we all survive. Now we finish off the demons, and because we have somewhat high HP at 280k, and he had to burn Immortality, we're unlikely to actually be able to get the skip here, which means we get Rune on phase 1. You want to try to get to the HP cap, which is 40-32, before Rune. It just sets up the specs for the rest of the fight really well, and makes it a little bit easier to manage. And you'll see the negatives, because we do actually miss this here, and you'll see the negatives of missing the skip on phase 2, where I had a really tough start to the phase, and it kind of ruined my DPS. So we're at HP cap here, and Rune is going on, which means we can't actually go inside. And in lower Enrages, you would damage him and lower his gray bar, but it's basically impossible to DPS through it. So we're just kind of hitting him with bleeds, hitting him with as much abilities as possible, and then as soon as the rune goes away, we go in to help knock down the witch quickly. At this time, the base is going to be luring the boss to the next pad, which is pad 4. Feel free to dump a little bit here. I didn't really. I was just kind of using basics the most of the time, but you have so much time to build back up while he's charging the pad that it doesn't really matter. So now for the second pad, I like to stand northeast of the boss. This just guarantees the fact that the melee is going to go to me, and I have pretty good mitigation strategies. So what happened on the previous phase is we insta-phased right after Rune, which means we're going to have 5 autos before it's going to do the melee special attack. So there's the first one, there's the second one, there's the third one, there's the fourth one, and there's the fifth one. Unfortunately, we didn't get to green HP, so it melees. This means it's going to do 2 special attacks back to back. So after one auto, it's going to send me inside. So I don't have enough time to resonance, so I use all the defensive abilities I can, and then I get my stun off there. If I had decided to res instead, I wouldn't have got the stun off, and then the team would have had to intercept. Probably me, I would have probably had to intercept everyone in the team, but that just meant we got damage. Ideally, I'd like to res that, but unfortunately I wasn't able to just with how the spec timings lined up. So now when we come out, we're going to have 5 autos until the next mechanic, which is Adrenaline Cage. So whenever I come out, I reapply the buff, and that means he's dealing less damage to us. So the two of them decide to stun very close to each other just so they're both in intercept range. Just good practice for the person who's responsible for septing to do that. So we decided to staff spec just to guarantee that we'd get this phasing. You want to phase it as quickly after the cage as possible. This time had 3 autos, which is not ideal, because that means it's going to only do 2 autos into melee on the next phase. On the next phase, we're going to pad 3, and with pad 3, we want to stand directly east of the boss. This means that A, we get the melee smoke instead of the base, and B, that we don't lure over the Life Reaver. So he already lured the boss over into the back so that when we do go under him, we're not getting in range of the healer. So we both stun east of the boss and start our stun staff spec rotation. You're going to want to kill this protector pretty much right away because it reduces damage. I think it's by 33% on Zammy while he's alive. I don't know specifics on that, but it's about that. So the melee came in and it was directed at my partner. We both devoted it. Unfortunately, I missed the flick there, so I did get my sign, but that's what the signs are there for. You can reflect that smoke to get a big reflect hit. As you might have seen, there was a 32.5k reflect hit. But now we're just DPSing it down to get to red HP, or get into green HP, and then 1 auto, and it's going to send us in again. Same thing, anticipate when the red box pops up, and then use impact. So I did get my stun off there, it just Chef happened to stall 2 stuns, and he pitted me. So that timing was correct if you're looking for a frame of reference. But same thing, we're DPSing it down and just getting the demons down, keeping them stunned. You can also entangle them if you don't want to deal with Ice Barrage, but we found it's easier than spellbook swapping Borrowed Power or spellbook swapping to normals and bringing Nature Runes to just Ice Barrage them, and a demon rarely goes through. So when we come out, you kind of look at the HP and determine whether you need to staff spec to phase it quick enough. And here we looked at it and we definitely needed to staff spec here in order to get the phasing in time. So we do a staff spec rotation and the Adrenaline Cage is going to happen again, where the other person down here at the bottom of the screen is septing with Devo on to make sure that the base does not die. Now, this is an important phase to get. You want to get it before the Chaos Blast so that you can save the Chaos Blast for the start of Phase 3 or Phase 4. Now, for this one of the 2 DPSers are going to stay down and kill this Life Reaver. That way, the base can just focus on bleeding the boss so that it heals as little as possible. So I'm just DPSing down at the Life Reaver, and Chef, who's inside the mine right now, is just killing the witch by himself. Now, once that's done, we are just kind of sitting here waiting for him to come out, because you don't want to burn all your good abilities without him there, because you're on gray HP right now, and you really can't damage it. Like, even though we're constantly attacking, the HP is not going below what it's maxed out at. So once it's maxed out and red is activated, I go ahead and staff spec and get my Omni Power, Wild Magics, and all that off. You can try to fit an Asphyxiate in before the stun point, but it's a little risky if everyone does it. So by not stunning here, we actually like stall out this mechanic, lets the soul split up to full, but it's going to hit us with like 100k damage each. So what the base does here is he immortalities and then intercepts us. And then because we got to green HP, it's going to go instantly into Rune after the one auto, which means the intercept will have run out by the time we start taking damage from autos again. At this point, you should be able to Sunshine again, though your staff spec cooldown will potentially still be too high to take a full use of it. So go ahead and DPS. If you are the Scepter, you're going to have to deal with the smoke and the intercept at the same time. So just be wary of that and save your Anticipate or Freedom for that. But apart from that, we're trying to get it to HP cap again, which is 1.8 million. If we don't get HP cap, it's going to be a second Chaos Blast, and the base will not have Immortality ready. Yeah, so the HP cap is 1728. Yeah, 1728. So at this point, I know that I'm going to be the one immortalitying, and I do make a mistake here. I don't immortality quick enough. Or I do immortality quick enough, but I just forget the fact that I have to intercept him. So he unfortunately signs, which is not ideal because you want to keep your signs as long as possible. Now, if you're the one intercepting, come into the mind immediately, like as soon as you see the death animation, and then resonance the Omni power that the witch is going to fire at you. And that should get you all the way back up to full HP, and the base can deal with luring the boss and all that sort of stuff. Now, when you come down on this time, you're going to want to go to the middle to get the buff on your buff bar here. This means that any traps that you run into deal very little damage, and they also don't stun you. So that's really good for dealing with traps. Like if there was a trap that spawned like very close to me, I'd be able to get rid of it before Rune of Destruction while I still have this buff up, so I wouldn't accidentally run into it and get stunned and then not be able to eat or prey flick and die to it. So that's very important. Now here we got Rune right before it flicked over to green HP, which means it's going to pretty much instantly melee. So after this auto, it's going to do a melee. And it went over here to Chef, and because of where we're at in the kill, he immortality'd it. He just didn't have enough time to get Debil, Reflect, Resonance, and Disrupt up, so he just took the safe option to make sure he survived. Now the next mechanic here is going to be Chaos Blast, so what we do is we prep another Sunshine, and the base is able to actually accept us here because they haven't used Immortality for quite a while. So they're going to do the same thing, and it's going to be 5 autos after Chaos Blast is when it's going to go into Rune. And you want to try to beat the Rune just to make your life a little bit easier. The base here is going to also Devo to make sure that they don't die to tanking 3 people's autos. It's very easy to get smited, especially if you have an Arcane on, but we just missed the HP cap as it was 960k. So we're kind of just chilling here, you know, camp shield, play defensively. Preparation is actually insanely powerful right here because you take a lot of like small hits with the sludge going over you. So if you take like 3 sludge hits, you're going to have res back, which will get you back to full HP. Once you're able to go up with the Rune going away, go inside and prep yourself to kill this witch. This is the last time you're going to be killing a witch inside, so be happy about that. But whoever has lower HP generally steps out in soul splits, and then whoever has higher HP is going to go MD and tank the boss and walk their combust and stuff. So we're going over to pad 1 for the final phase. And again, you want to go through the middle to get the buff. That's just so that you don't get screwed over by a trap here. And then the base is going to charge up the pad again ASAP. We want to keep that gray HP bar as low as possible. You don't want to wait for us to like fully set up, because otherwise it can get even higher. So because we got Rune on phase 5, the first mechanic here is going to be melee after 5 autos, and it's going to do a similar thing on phase 2 where it's going to be tough phasing. So what we do is we actually we chill a little bit here. We don't fully dump. You can see I'm kind of camping high adrenaline. I'm using ABSs, but I'm not like using Wild Magic or Omni. That's just to make sure that green HP is delayed a little bit so that the base can get their immortality off, and we can also get them to stun. Now, now here, again, good time to soul split up. At this point, you're through the toughest part of the fight. Red HP on P6, I think, is by far the toughest part of the entire fight. So if you've made it this far, that means you have the capability to eventually get a 4K kill. It might not be this attempt, but you'll eventually get one. So we're just killing the demons as kind of normal. And this is also a good time to be able to trade. I trade over my last soup to the base. They were just a little low on food. And then I unpacked my Primal Feast so that I have 8 hard food left. It's like I have a full inventory of food again, which is why I bring those Primal Feasts. So we're going to Sun Staff Spec. Same thing we've been doing on every phase, but feel free to play like really defensively here. This phase hurts, especially when he's doing range autos. It is pretty brutal. If you miss a flick, you're dead. Like it's pretty much not impossible to survive, but you're pretty much dead. So again, we're just doing the same thing we have on every other phase, counting the autos here. And once the 4th auto comes out, you can Devotion. And then make sure you flick over to Melee Prey. I've Devotioned early sometimes, and then I just forget to swap over to Melee Prey. Because you're like, oh, I Devotioned, I'm safe. So the base is going to get the smoke again, and they're going to do the same immortality. But you don't need to worry about the slowing down of DPS, because there's 5 autos between this time. So he has ample time to immortality, get up, build adrenaline, build HP, and get a nice stun off. If you are ever low HP for this part, you can put your Arcane on, as I did there. It knocked the hit from like a 3.2k to from a 3.2k to a 2.1k, so it can be really beneficial there. But at this point, this is kind of your last recoup point. Get yourself ready, re-overload, reanimate dead, make sure Insight Fear is on. I think I actually, in this kill, I forget to turn Insight Fear on, which kind of screws me over for the first half of P7. So always check your Insight Fear when you're leaving the mind here. So it's 100k left, and we are just gonna basically thresh it down. Wild Magic, Asphyxiate. We don't want to use Omni, because we're going to be using Omni as our very first ability on the next phase. So we use basically everything but Omni. And as long as you get it reasonably fast, it's not a big deal. So P7 transition is kind of time to get ready. Spam click your Demon Slayer Sigil as it helps here. And then you want to Omni Power Debreath the demon so it dies. Now I'm just going to pause here so I can talk about a couple things. You're going to split up into 3 different locations. One person is going to go to the star, one person is going to go to the middle, and one person is going to go to the B. And if you Omni Power Debreath correctly, your next ability can be Resonance, and you're going to be able to res this mage hit. So 2 of us got it. I think he diverted based on the 124 hit to get his adrenaline up. That's why you kind of want to enter the final phase with near 100% adrenaline. And then at this point, you'll be able to do your your Sunshine. So Sunshine and then A-Pot. And then at this point, click your rune for 2 abilities. So I'm at B, so I'm going to click B for 2 abilities. And he's at star, so he's going to hit star for 2 abilities. But it ended up being B as the correct rune. So I just kept staying on B and attacking it. At this point, I also noticed that my Insight Fear was off. So that slows me down and screws over my adrenaline more than I would have liked. The third one is Twig. We found that going for this left twig is better. I'm not sure why. I think it's just maybe with this little ledge here.
So we always do left twig first, and if we happen to get a second one, then we go to the other one. So my adren's really low, which is not ideal. But what you want to do defensively here is you devotion the melee hit, and then you're going to Vit Pot, Debilitate, Disruption Shield, the big explosion. So I have Devotion up here, so I stay full HP, and you want to make sure you're eating. Like, you should be at least 12k HP here. There's no reason not to be. So I Devotion the melee hit. I get my Vit Pot, my Disrupt, and my Debilitate on, and instead of taking like 30k damage, I think is what the red HP bar was, we all take about 14k. Chives over here, I believe, missed one of them. Based on the damage he took, I'm estimating that he missed Disruption Shield, so he took a 24k here, which means he's nearly dead. So we want to have this 14 or 15k hit so that our HP is in a good position. Then you want to make sure you get your Omni Power, Wild Magic, and at least part of your Tendrils. Because I had really low adrenaline, I was late. Then once your Debilitate runs out, you're going to want to Reflect. This is so that the boss doesn't kill you, because if all three of you survive to the second cycle, especially when it's like below 400k, you've got it in the bag. So here I reflected, and you can see like the reflect still does damage. Like that reflected an 8k, so you can really do damage, but just spam, eat, reflect, and make sure you stay above 50% adrenaline, because that is the barometer you need to be at. So you're still attacking, and as soon as you see him go immune, that is the point where you can divert your very next ability. So divert is used to gain adrenaline very quickly, because this melee hit is going to be like a 15k hit. It's going to give you 50% adrenaline. So I'm going to go from 81.2 to 100 regardless of what happens. So I diverted, he hits me, I take a little bit of damage because the 77 went through the divert, and then the 182 was the second part from double tap. Or no, that's not how it works. The 77 is from the bleed, but 182 went through divert based on the edict order. So that put us all at 100% adrenaline, and then your very next ability is going to be Immortality, because the second explosion is going to hit you at 30k, and we have basically no other defensives left to survive. So we all Immortality'd here, and Chef here knew that he was going to survive. So he Immortality. And then once he Immortality, he intercepted the rest of the team just in case someone misclicked or the like. And Chives over here had mentioned that he was about to die and didn't think he was going to get his Immortality, so he made sure to sept him. So now that we've all survived this, the most important part is put on your melee prey. And that's because the demon can slap. And Chef over here still has Mr. Chives immorted. And because he didn't go in the immort animation because he was septed, he's taking melee hits that are being sent over. And the tick that he got put up, he took a 4.7k, which is unfortunate. Nothing really he could have done there. Maybe he could have ate through it, but it's a really tough position to be in. Generally, it's better for everyone to get their own immortality for that very reason, and or run away from the demon if they get septed. So now we're on the second cycle here, and you want to just focus the demon down, get on melee prey, and don't die to it while paying attention to the order. This was Twig, Stick, and then the final one is B. Getting a final rune that's close on the second rotation is extremely valuable. Now, I actually had to stop the recorder to go back and look at what the rune rotation was, so let me pull up the second clip. So here is the second clip, and it's a couple minutes have passed by, and essentially what we're doing here is we are trying to get Chives to survive to a third rotation. He still has the Sign of Life, I do not, which means I can keep him alive for a little bit longer by immorting and then sacrificing myself. and then he can immort himself, sign himself, and that should be enough to survive to a third rotation. The main rotation we're going to be going through is we're both going to natty, tsunami, staff spec, and then meta. And we're going to put magmas down under the boss. And then I'm going to kill the B rune, and we're going to just unload our Omni tendrils. I'm going to sept him immortality and hope for the best and hope that he's able to survive for a third rotation. If Chef was alive here at 360k, we would just YOLO it with Omni, Wild Magic, Tendrils, and we'd get the 360k damage done before the explosion hit us and die. So I natty, and he's going to do it 1 global cooldown later. We use 2 defensives into a Tsunami staff spec and build back up to 100% adrenaline. From there, put on Ice Barrage and Metamorphosis, and I magma the boss, and then I corrupt the rune. From there, I Omni Tendrils, and at some point I need to put my shield on, but unfortunately I missed it, so I just intercept Chives so that I die, and he goes ahead and immortalities and survives for another rotation. And for the next rotation, he's going to be alone, so all he needs to do is do the exact same thing, except for he has to get the damage before the explosion goes off, and as long as it's under 150k, it's extremely easy to do. And as I died, it had 60k HP left, so it should be fine. That's the end of the video. I hope you learned something. Maybe you won't do a 2k Zami kill, but this might help out your 500% kills with a little more intimate knowledge of how Zami works. Or if you're pushing up in solo up to 1000%, could help you there with understanding how the different HP bars work. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. If you liked the video, drop a like down below. Any questions, leave a comment. I'll do my best to help out in the comments because I know I said a lot and I probably didn't cover even enough to really fully understand 2K. I just suggest going in, learning it for yourself, and beating your head against the wall. Maybe wait for the death cost rework. Anyways, take care, have a good one, and I'll catch you in the next one.